everybody. Thanks for being here. I think you'll have to excuse those of us from the US. We're a little strung out and a little bit tired, but determinedly optimistic. And I think this panel is incredibly pertinent to the events of last night. I think we can all agree that there's a crisis in US media, and I think we can expand that into a kind of global conversation. I don't want to lay this all on poor Till here, but Adblock has been seen by some as at least partly to blame, for some of the difficulties that content creators are having in monetizing serious journalism. I know he sees it very differently, and I'll give you the floor to lay out your case.
Well, I think the challenge we're facing is how does content monetize on the web? So right now we're still relying on ad impressions, which I believe is a fundamentally broken business model, which is why we need to evolve it. And as Adblock Plus, we are empowering users to have control over their browsing experience. At the same time, as CPIO, the company that runs Adblock Plus, we're working with publishers on alternative, more user-friendly monetization methods, which are more sustainable. And that's a combination of alternative, less intrusive ads, as well as a new product that we recently announced, which is going to be the very first payment system for content on the web that automatically works everywhere without any friction for the user. So I believe the web is a medium in which the user is in control that creates new challenges for publishers, but it's also a great opportunity for companies that really want to focus on a great user experience and see a user-determined open web more as an opportunity than just a threat.
Are publishers welcoming what essentially could be seen as a loss of sovereignty of their control over their own experience, user experience, and monetization?
I think we're giving them back control, because one of the historical mistakes that publishers have made is they've completely outsourced their monetization to third parties that may not care about their relationship with their readers. So what we're doing is we're empowering publishers to create an alternative version of their website with less intrusive ads that they actually control again. And I think this is an important step for publishers to regain control over their monetization and think about monetizing their audience in a much more sustainable way.
Are you grateful for this this assistance?
Deeply grateful. No, I think I recognize Till's innovation and entrepreneurship, but I think it's actually, this is a problem that the publishing industry, content creators actually made for ourselves. It's sort of so I think with a bit of humility, publishers like ourselves can actually say, Till, good job. You've seen an opportunity in the market that we caused between consumer experience and monetization. But the fact is that we are going to solve this problem ourselves. We're well into it. And there's no reason why we should accept over time to have a third-party intermediary, much like we are in many ways with other platforms like Facebook and others, to own our customer relationships, to take value out of the value chain, and to diminish, frankly, the value that we can realize from the expensive, extremely important content gathering, content analysis, content creation process, which premium publishers go about. So I think, much like BitTorrent or much like Napster, these things happen over time. These technologies emerge. But as we've seen with other examples in the past, I think that that premium content publishers and others will figure this solution out for themselves, and hopefully provide a better solution to what Till's offering.
Okay.
Owning our direct relationship with the customer is a massively important thing for the Financial Times. We're not as reliant on advertising as some other publishers. Roughly half of our revenue comes from people paying us for content. We recognized a long time ago that that's a massively important thing. So I don't need Till to mediate that relationship for me. We already have a direct relationship with the customer and genuinely care about the customer experience that we're offering them, and that we're offering them quality journalism that helps them with their business life. the really important thing is about that customer experience. And it is genuinely the case that ad blocking has maybe accelerated some of the change to how we advertise. We are much more careful and have published a charter about how we deal with people's privacy, how we deal with their experience, make sure that it's not intrusive, make sure that it's as fast as possible. And all credit to Till and other companies out there, that has accelerated that change. But the relationship is with our customer and making sure that we can serve them the best possible journalist, and we won't be mediating that via any other third party.
So in your sense, is Adblock kind of a symptom, if you'll forgive me, of a broader disease that's infecting the media business?
Yeah, and it's not the only challenge that we face. This is really seriously challenging times. But I think the really positive thing is that what we do has never been more important. It is massively important that we are informing people and helping them make sense of all the noise that is out there. And there are many other factors that we have to consider around the kind of news that people are getting, the Facebook filter bubble, all those sorts of things are things that challenge us. We have to work out how we deal with Google AMP and how we deal with Facebook Instant Articles. And one of the key principles that we hold very dear at the Financial Times is understanding our customer, understanding what they're doing so that we can serve them the right content. And all the time when we're looking at anything like Adblock Plus or Facebook Instant Articles or Google AMP or any of those things, it's that particular thing about understanding how often people are engaging with our content, because that's where all the good stuff comes from. If we can make sure that people are as engaged as possible, then we know that they are more likely to retain. If they're a subscriber, they're more likely to take a trial, they're more likely to move from a trial to a subscriber. So owning that relationship is massively important. The other thing that we know is that we ran an A/B test on what people will do if they have the ad block situation explained to them. If we block the content, we know that 60% of people will 66% of the people will turn the ad block off. If we just ask them quite nicely, 40% of people will turn it off. So it has forced us to be more honest, but people value that content. And if they understand how important advertising is in order to sustain our business so we can continue to do what we feel is an extraordinarily important job, then they're willing to turn their ad blocker off in order to consume that content.
Yeah, and you have a lot of publishers who are seeing lots of success with ad-light subscription models, exactly what Till is trying to build as a third party, but I think a lot of this stuff is going to be the domain of the publishers themselves.
Right. Till, is your audience for this new product is not really these two folks, is it? It's for publications that are maybe a little further down the food chain, if I may be snobby for a second?
Well, I believe that right now we have two business models, ads and subscriptions. And they work very well for some companies, but it doesn't really work for the entire web. And I think the challenge we still have to figure out is how do we monetize the entire web? Of course, if you have a brand like Financial Times, users will go the extra mile. They will sign up for a premium subscription. They will disable the ad blocker if you ask them. But the entire web, I feel like still requires a scalable, user-friendly, sustainable way how it's monetizing.
Right. So one of the criticisms of Adblock has been a lack of transparency, that the transaction between the publisher and Adblock is something that is a bit shrouded in secrecy, and critics have said that it amounts to extortion in some cases. The language on both sides has become very emotional, very high-pitched, and I think a number of publishers seem to be quite exercised about this new product.
Well, I get that many publishers feel a bit cornered right now, but I also feel like more and more publishers see the opportunity in providing a more user-friendly experience. And our acceptable ads program is one way to tackle the issue that just in general users have become extremely frustrated with ads. And I think there are very good reasons for that. There are security concerns, privacy concerns, just the overall annoyance level completely has gone out of hand. And that's why a segment of users has been lost, especially the text-heavy users. And acceptable ads is a way to win those users back by addressing them on their own terms, by just showing them ads they're willing to accept. And what we've been able to prove is that fewer but more high quality ads actually provide more value for everybody. And that's why also more and more publishers seize that opportunity. And now in the US, out of the top 100 Alexa sites, 40 of them now have acceptable ads, which I feel validates the model because we've been able to prove it works for publishers, but also, more importantly, the users are on board.
Right. Other than them doing a deal with Adblock Plus, what makes an ad acceptable?
I think that's really up to each individual user to decide, and ad blocking really is a tool to empower users to make their own decisions. We have invested a lot of research into figuring out what kind of criteria do we have to create so that we can certify ads that qualify for acceptable ads programs. So we've done eye tracking studies, lots of surveys, but we also want to open up that process. So we're currently establishing an independent committee that hopefully will have representatives from all the relevant stakeholders of the media industry represented in this committee, and we will hand over the task to define what is an acceptable ad over to this committee.
I'd love to get your responses, and then after that, broaden this discussion out a little bit to the viability of an ad-supported news and media business. But if you guys have any reactions, love to hear that.
I think to think that we don't think about the customer experience is phenomenally condescending. We do think about the customer experience. We ask people to pay a premium price for our content. I think the interesting side effect of ad blocking is that on other sites that are more dependent on advertising than we are, you're seeing even more ads as a result of it, because they're trying to cram more into the page in order to monetize their users. So for those of us who have a premium product which people will pay a price for that is thoroughly differentiated, we're in a better position. It's not easy. It's not easy for anybody in this business to make money out of publishing content. But for those who are thoroughly reliant on advertising, actually it's not improving the customer experience at all. Where there were 3 ads, there are now 6. Because they're desperately trying to shore up their revenue. So I fail to see that there is a direct relationship between the rise of the ad blockers and an improvement in customer experience.
And maybe what this panel is showing is that there is, in fact, a different experience between global premium brands like Bloomberg or the Financial Times and the quality of our content, the amount of kind of committed investment resources, technology resources we have to solving these problems ourselves, as well as the amount of value that we actually have at stake, given higher ad prices, given higher subscription opportunities. So it could be that there's a bifurcation in the market. The higher premium players, such as Bloomberg, the FT, and others, are going to be solving this problem, are solving this problem quite satisfactorily on our own right now. But maybe there's a broad sort of mass set of sites, as you may have mentioned, or brands that are going to be more likely to partner with Adblock. We certainly won't.
But I think you raised an important point that revenues are decreasing, and some publishers feel forced to compensate for the decrease in revenues by allowing more ads and more aggressive ads on their site. And this is really creating this vicious cycle in which ads are becoming more and more aggressive, at the same time less and less valuable.
That's not always true, because I know many publishers who are looking at the challenge of decreasing digital ad revenue by actually coming up with far more innovative, far more effective, native, bespoke, custom advertising units, content marketing, which is actually raising the value of advertising and raising the value of particularly that advertising as content to the consumer. So I think there's sort of the bottom fisher sort of market space, which are just sort of probably scrambling for revenue, desperately looking to fill their ads, their pages with ads. And then I think there are a lot of publishers who are going up the value chain and saying, how can we actually connect with consumers with content as advertising that's a lot more valuable and actually gaining more revenue from it.
But that's exactly the thing we're trying to accomplish with acceptable ads as well. I think the only difference is we want to roll it out to the entire web so that all publishers can benefit from that.
I think just to pivot quickly, since we have only 3 minutes and a bit more left, any of us in the United States know what a disaster this election season has been from a news and media point of view. I've been, as a Clinton supporter, I was following some of the Trump feeds. Yesterday, Clinton was actually accused of being a serial murderer, and the kind of sort of separation from truth that's happened suggests to me that for companies like Bloomberg and the FT, you're not just competing with the ad market, you're competing with what really is a vast wasteland of what I would call post-truth, a kind of untethered world in which attempting to connect people to accurate information has become harder and harder. Whose fault is that?
Well, I think that I think there's a lot of blame to be put at the feet of a lot of people in the media industry and beyond, in terms of how this election was covered. I do think that what your example plays into this broader discussion around the relationship and the sort of emerging stakes between publishers and brands and social platforms or social feeds. Where we have this frenemy relationship where we are getting all of our traffic and all of our audiences from a lot of these platforms, not Bloomberg per se, which is more specialized, but yet we're outsourcing much of the economic value to the platforms. And so but the investments that's required to create really high quality content, analytical content, independent content, verified content, we are not completely participating in that entire monetization, yet the platforms and the feeds are, as you say, kind of presenting a different, perhaps less accurate picture, while at the same time participating in the monetization of the content we create. So it's just yet another example of the emerging problems between premium publishers and platforms that I think is the biggest theme in media today.
And I think the other interesting thing is we're maybe 5 months further down our similar experience, 5 months after Brexit. And what we did see was a serious rise in new customers coming to the Financial Times to make sense of the new world that people had woken up to. And they were genuinely new audiences. And they were coming from places like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and we're seeing new people who really wanted that Financial Times explanation of not just the what, but the how and what it all meant. We will see similar things as a result of Trump as all things start to play out. But there is genuine value in what we do in helping people understand the world in which we live. And that has never been more true than it is right now. But it's never, ever been more noisy either.
Right. Is the ad-supported media business a business, ultimately?
I think it's under significant pressure and going through a major transformation. I think it can be a business if the relationships with the platforms are sorted out on a more equitable basis. And I think it also can be a profitable business if one thinks disruptively and differently around how you create content, cost structures, user-generated content, and so on. But it's certainly under a lot of stress right now.
Great. Last word, since we're out of time.
It's part of the picture, but if you think it's going to be your sole source of revenue, then no, you have to get people to pay for your content.
Right. Till, last word.
I believe one of the problems we're facing is with the ad impression-based business model, we're setting the wrong incentives. So I think it is time that we look at better metrics when it comes to compensating content, because we have to reward well-researched quality journalism much better, and the current ad impression-based business model doesn't do that. It basically sets the wrong incentives to create an unsustainable monetization method.
Great. Thank you, everybody.